Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Wild Like a Flower Gardening. My name is Sarah, and I know that I am long overdue for taking you guys on a container garden tour to update you on how my native wildflower starts are, how my native wildflowers that overwintered in pots are doing, and how, some of my vegetable starts in this really wacky container apartment garden are doing. So I have my trusty animals out here with me, and we're going to take a look at how my plants are doing, for better or worse. So I'm excited. Let's go. So this is a pot that has taken, I think, the longest out of all my wildflower pots to come back. In this one I have some butterfly weed. I think this is ironweed. I don't remember putting this in here last year, but I'm not surprised. This is a common milkweed that I snagged from one of the gardens I'm working on. And so at this garden, their mailbox has a flower bed around it, and it has been just absolutely taken over with common milkweed. And if there's anything that you know about common milkweed, it's how almost invasive it is in your garden. It's very aggressive, and it just forms, large stands. And so if you aren't trying to grow common milkweed there at all, it's kind of awkward when it pops up and overtakes and overshadows everything. So they've had me remove some. We've been replanting it around their pond, and I took some home. So hopefully this gets some monarchs on it. These stems here are from tropical milkweed that I grew in this pot last year. I know there's a lot of research that just came out this year, and I've been hearing it on a lot of different pollinator Zooms, is that we should not be growing tropical milkweed, especially if it's not native to your state, and it is not native to the state of Ohio. I bought one tropical milkweed last year at the farmer's market because my milkweed pot, I couldn't find any common milkweed or any other varieties, and so all I could get was butterfly weed, and so I went with the one tropical milkweed so I'd have more. I'm considering just taking it out, since they did say not to grow it, and it did produce seeds, and the seeds that dropped into the pot are growing, so I don't really want this to be a plant that's establishing itself like out here. That would be wrong of me to let that happen, so I may just dig it out. So over here next to my milkweed pot, I have a container with lots of garlic, and then a container with lots of onions, and then I threw in some sunflower seeds because you just really cannot tell me what to do. I want some big sunflowers, and I figured if I could get some growing out of these bigger containers that I also have veggies growing in, why not? All of the sunflower seeds that I went ahead and planted this year are seeds that I saved from the chocolate cherry sunflowers that I grew last year. I had bought a pack for them, and it didn't have too many, and I planted a bunch at my mom's house, and so I saved a ton of the seeds from that the last time I was up there, and the seeds had matured, and they're honestly all germinating, which is really exciting. So I have like a Philadelphia cream cheese container full of my favorite sunflower seeds, so I stuck them in as many pots as I could because I felt like it. This is a little window box that I'd like to have out front. So far it has Fleabane and Catnip growing. I did put some zinnia seeds in here, but honestly it doesn't seem like the cooler weather really made those zinnias happy, so I will probably have to put more zinnia seeds in here to hopefully get a few that are more successful, because they're growing over here and they're just really little. It has been warm the last few days, but we did have a couple cold nights that probably didn't make those too happy. So this big guy is probably my favorite thing that I have growing right now. This is a big asparagus. I'm maybe 5'5", and it comes up to my chin, and I'm just super excited about it because I put some asparagus in here last year, and I know you're not supposed to harvest it for a few years. I didn't really harvest anything last year except for maybe one or two when I was really hungry and I came outside. So I'm excited to see it put on so early, so hopefully it'll be a good year for asparagus, and I will probably leave it alone again this year, but I'll be honest, I'll probably munch every once in a while. I did stick some garlic in here as well, along with some more chocolate cherry sunflowers. So here I have a little container with strawberries. I think I'd like to pot them up here soon, so maybe I have bigger strawberry plants this year. These are from last year, and they overwintered and never really died back until they put on new growth. And I had a couple strawberry flowers back at the end of March, which was really surprising. Today is May 4th, and obviously, as you can see, it has put on a lot more flowers, which is really exciting. Hopefully, in a few more weeks, I can see some strawberries developing. This is an onion from a store-bought onion that I saved and I forgot about in this pot, and I thought it died, and it came back, and I'm interested to dig it out when it's done growing. Over here I have some of those overwintered wildflowers that I kept in pots throughout the winter here in southeastern Ohio. And this right here is that balloon flower that my neighbor dumped out back. And you can see it is thriving, dumped in a ditch who. So I'm really excited. Eventually I'll pot it up out front, but for now it's going to stay here so it can get lots and lots of sunshine because my front porch is a little shaded. So here's that phlox that I've been growing. Last year it broke off twice from wind, but it's off to a good start. And then some dill that must have seeded itself in here has been growing. So last year I grew dill in hopes to make some homemade dill pickles. I hate pickles, but I thought that if I made them myself I would like them. And I hated them all the same and was really sad about it. So I'm going to keep the dill. I mostly grow it now for butterflies. I have a friend and her daughters who raise eastern black swallowtail butterflies, so they grow a lot of rue and some other herbs that are host plants for these butterflies. And so last year I did not get any black swallowtails on my dill or the parsley that I grew, but I'm hoping maybe this year they find it. That'd be really cool. So this is a pot I'm pretty excited about. It has my black-eyed Susans in here, and they've been coming back really well. I'm still keeping this pot out back until maybe it gets a little taller so that way you can actually see there's plants in here if I move it to the front porch. And then I forgot the name of it the last time I filmed, and I am now brain farting on it once again. I think it's something catch fly. Am I onto something? I don't know. Tell me in the comments if this looks like something and you recognize it. A friend gifted 2 of them to me, and I really just cannot remember what they were called. But the little coneflower in here is coming back. This one was only a few inches tall last year, so I don't think it's a true species. And something's been eating it, which is interesting. I haven't been able to figure out who, but I'm letting it do its thing. This might be a plant that I add to the front garden at my apartment complex just to put it in the ground. I think the phlox is probably going to go into one of the gardens that I'm working on right now as well, because I think it would do better in the ground rather than in a pot where the wind can break it off again this year. I did have some bee balm in here last year, and it popped up right here on the edge, which I find really weird. Oh, oops. But I'm interested. They haven't really gotten much bigger. Maybe it'll balloon up here in another couple days, but this is it for now. I also have a chocolate cherry sunflower in here that is not doing so hot. It's been in here through a couple of these cold flashes, and I just think that it's not happy. And on my last video that I filmed, I had asked if anyone knew what these were when they were a lot smaller. I pulled them out and they weren't oniony, and so I think that they are some kind of crocus, and they obviously didn't flower or do anything for me this year, but I'm gonna let them hang out and maybe they'll do something next year. If anyone thinks that I should definitely pull them out, let me know, but this pot only has 2, and I think there's just only a couple others in a few other pots, so we'll let them hang out. They're cool. Over here I have some interesting projects. These jugs are what I put some wildflower seeds in, and I let them stay out over the winter. So in this big kitty litter jug here, let's see if this works, I've got some showy milkweed inside, which I realize now showy milkweed is not native to Ohio, but I think I'm still going to continue growing it because I'll stick it in some pots of mine. Hopefully it is a little better than growing something like tropical milkweed, but I would probably not have started these if I would have realized that they were not native to the state of Ohio, but they're not a bad milkweed to have either, so I think it's not going to be the end of the world. Let me know in the comments if it is the end of the world. In this little jug, I have a bunch of showy goldenrod seeds in there, and I'm hoping to separate these guys when they get a little bit bigger. Right now they're all still pretty puny. And this jug had my world milkweed, which is native to the state of Ohio, but as you can see there really isn't anything going on in there, so I don't know. I grew some common milkweed seeds last year and I did not see anything germinate until probably the end of May, so I'm wondering if these are just going to lag behind, but I will let you guys know if it's a dud, because I don't really know what to do if it's a total dud. In this really big tub, I decided to plant potatoes and then to use this jug afterwards for whatever else like I want to grow that needs a lot of growing space. I could guarantee you that there are probably better ways to grow potatoes, but in an apartment complex, I figured that this would be a good idea, and so I took a lot of soil that I had laying around in separate pots and dumped it in. I put some sticks and logs at the very bottom so I don't weigh it down too heavy with just straight up soil. And then I put the potatoes in there. So hopefully it works out. They were little fingerling potatoes, so I don't know. We're going to find out if this was a good idea or a bad idea, but I needed to put the potatoes in because they were going to go bad if I didn't. So please, no shade on my tomato plants. I know they are not happy. I had them inside for like 4 or 5 days in a row because it was so cold again, and the lack of sunlight really made them sad. So we're out here in the full sun trying to dry out a little bit too because it's been so rainy. I moved my veggie and my native wildflower starts up onto my shelving unit just to get them out of the rain. You can see just by looking at the soil, they're super saturated, and some of them are starting to look a little sad. So I figured it was time to put them in a position to dry out, which I know it's super sunny right now, but today is a day of like rain and sun and rain and sun, and you can see I got some more down here as well. This is just like my little garden center, and I know it's messy, but you know, when this is all I've got to work with here, like, this is kind of what we gotta do. My favorite wildflower so far is the wild geranium. I only have one. I think the other plant that's in here is like a Fleabane or a dandelion seed that germinated. But yeah, out of all of the wild geranium seeds that I broadcasted in here and a couple other cups, this was all that I got. And I put them out in the wintertime for cold stratification, so I'm pretty bummed that all I'm getting is one. If you've grown it before and you have any tips on growing spring ephemerals, please drop them down in the comments. So I know this isn't probably as cool or as nice as one of the official green stock, vertical growing towers, but I really like this. I ordered it last year for like probably under $50 from Home Depot. Painted the bright, horrible traffic cone orange to this paint that I have painted everything. I have like a pint of it, and everything that I've been crafting I just turned into this color because why not? None of the mint died back. Here's catnip, here's apple mint. Those are all coming back and coming out of pockets that they were not in last year, so be careful if you grow mint in one of these. It takes over like the whole flat. I threw some peas and some beans, but those beans are not happy because it got cold and I didn't bring them in because I can't really move this thing. Some asters that are growing in the bottom layer are coming back and popping out on a couple sides, so that's kind of cool. I figured I would just let this thing vibe. I grew zinnias in the top last year, and I think I want to do that again. This side, not as much as coming back to life, but I figured I would let it hang out until I find more things that I want to grow in it. Here I have some peas that I put out next to a tiny trellis, so hopefully those will grow even more in the next couple days and start to trellis themselves. Like I had said earlier, I'm growing some parsley, but it's mostly for the butterflies. You know, those black swallowtails will use these different herbs as host plants. The native plant that would be more appropriate for them would be golden Alexanders, but this is the best that I have for now. I haven't seen any evidence of eggs on it. Right here I have some dogwoods that I dug up at a client's house the other day that they wanted to get out of their garden because they were in a garden bed and not where they were supposed to be, and they let me keep them, so hopefully I can pot them up and do something with them. We will see. But yeah, my little parsley. Grew it last year too. This is a new one. Picked this up at the farmer's market, but hopefully it does well, and maybe I'll get a butterfly or two. That would be the dream. In my window I have a mulberry tree that I dug up at my mother's that has come back. One of my houseplants that needs a little extra sun is now out here. My daffodils never bloomed, guys. What did I do wrong? And what do I do with them now? I don't know. Help me. This is a little evergreen shrub that the late frosts really made quite sad, so it's just chilling in here. We'll see if it wants to do anything for me. Fleabane establish itself in here, and I'm just letting it grow because I feel like it. And then I have a bucket of beans. These are bush beans, so hopefully they'll give me some snack beans here in a couple more weeks. I really, really, really love to grow basil, so I picked up a few starts already. I need to be better about making sure it's not going to flower. I guess it's a good reason to stop and film your plants so you can see things that you're missing. But yeah, with basil, if you haven't grown it before, you want to pinch off the flowers, and you want to pinch off and harvest growth this way, so that way it bushes out. Like these little leaves here will bush out if I, pluck it off right here. So that's how I harvest my basil. I think that's the rule of thumb. And I am just obsessed with basils on my tomato sandwiches. So hopefully I will have lots of basil ready by the time I have some tomatoes. This is one of my houseplants that I brought outside. This is a big old agave, and I do literally nothing for it, and it thrives. Down here I have some arugula. I love arugula on my breakfast sandwiches, but I have not been eating it fast enough. It's bolting, sending up that center stalk, and I'm kind of bummed. So I don't know if it works the same with arugula as like herbs, if you just pluck off where it wants to flower, if it'll be fine, or if it's all going to taste funky. Some cilantro, you can see back there that I tried to grow some cilantro by seeds, and growing them by seed was just not working at all, so I picked up some starts, so hopefully I can have some cilantro soon too for salsa making purposes. I brought some containers that filled with Fleabane out here just because, if it's going to establish itself, cool, free plants. It is a host plant, and as you can see, I've got 2 of them, so why not have it? I don't have much else blooming. Can't pass up a free flower. I did buy a few little sweet alyssums to stick into my pots. This is a pot with a big fig tree in it, and I know this is a weed, it's just here for now, but the sweet alyssum is really pretty and it smells awesome. Yeah, I know, we need to talk about that. Why did I do that? Why? I love figs, but really? Yeah, okay. This pot has more of those sweet alyssums that I picked up, and my intentions are to plant a sunflower or some zinnias here, maybe a tall purple coneflower. It depends on what's ready when, but I'm just thinking 1 or 2 tall plants with these little guys would be really cute. Also, container garden problems, just like any other garden problems, seeds of all kinds finding their way into my pots. And honestly, last year I had lots of trees growing. I've had sycamore trees, maple trees, all kinds of stuff, so you gotta be mindful in your containers too. They can be just as weedy as a garden bed. Okay, so these are what I'm the most excited to show you guys. Last year I grew some raspberries in pots, and I didn't really get any berries, but I know this year, because we have more second year stem growth, I've got lots of flower buds on both of my raspberry plants, so I'm super excited. You can see here, this is evidence of a stem nesting bee, and this occurred last year because this was a stem cutting that was here, and somebody made a home out of that. But this now, the stuff that's filling it, is evidence of somebody else in there now this year, which is really cool. That's why I try to keep stems, especially cut stems. I cut them longer for stem nesting bees, and I also just in general try not to cut back most of my vestiges. To accompany my raspberries, I threw in some lavender, which is about to flower. There's catnip in here from last year. I think a little Fleabane made it in the pot as well. Here's some more of these raspberries. So cute. So last year I bought all these tomato cages for growing tomatoes, and I didn't use them at all with my actual tomato plants, and so I was thinking of ways I could use them, and I had trained this raspberry vine to grow around it, and I think so far it's a success. This pot here is another one of my wildflower pots. Obviously I got lots of catnip in here. I just threw catnip in a lot of these pots last year as filler. This year I think it's going to get ripped out because it's so aggressive. But I have a blazing star and my bee balm from last year, which my bee balm is not coming back as strong as I thought it would. And again, it's kind of coming up like it did in that other pot, right up against the edge, which I find really weird. Not sure how it's going to look this year, but I hope it turns out okay because it was one of my favorites last year. Okay, so this is the last of my wildflower bundle pots. This one has what I think is called lamb's ear, There's a violet that's snuck in here as well. It's not blooming, but it's got big leaves, so maybe it'll make a nice host plant for some fritillaries. I threw a bunch of chocolate cherry sunflowers in here because I love them, and I grew one in this pot last year and it did really well, so I figured I'd try a few and see how many I could get away with. There was a black-eyed Susan in here, but I don't see it. And I think a lot of grass seed from my bird seed made it in here, so I have to be mindful of that. And then there's some weeds in here too, but they're just going to chill because nothing's flowering, and if I have weeds, they're going to flower before some of my potted plants. I'm just going to let them, but I do rip my weeds out before they go to seed. That's important because you don't want them seeding into your soil and, you know, making more and more problems. So yeah, that's all I got. Hopefully the lawn guy in the background didn't deter you guys from watching my whole plant tour. Thank you guys for coming with me on my little apartment garden tour. I know it's not much, but I look forward to updating you guys again in a couple more weeks. But until then, happy gardening from me, Stella, Luna, and Sprouts around here somewhere. So we'll see you next time.